All right, everybody, welcome. This is who am I? My name is Elling. I'm the coordinator of the RPM Challenge. Welcome to today. We're doing. I should have written something down, maybe. Anyway, I always stumble through these introductions, and I'm a mess. The RPM Challenge, for anybody who doesn't know, is a challenge to anybody in the world to record music in the month of February. And it's open to everybody. It's any genre, any level of experience, anywhere in the world. And you can find out more about that at rpmchallenge.com. And over this month, February, we are in partnership with organizations presenting a series of workshops to help you on your journey towards making that sound possible. So here we are today. We have a fabulous workshop lined up, and I'm stopping my screen share. And yeah, really excited to be co-presenting this with Lanya Sarah Harris from Lanya. Hi, how are you?
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Great.
That's awesome. Welcome to the third workshop that we're presenting together with RPM. We're super stoked this week to have our tech coordinator. Technical director is the correct term. Michelle Lacour here to teach us a bit about mixing and mastering, getting your RPM polished up for submission. It's very exciting stuff.
Got to get it ready.
Yeah.
Let's polish it off, spit wash that thing.
Definitely. So how's it going, Michelle?
It's going great. Nice to see you guys.
Good to see you. Michelle is has a Master of Sound Recording from McGill, and she works locally in St. John's, doing recording for film and TV, recording for music, live sound, coordination, etc., mixing, mastering, all that jazz. So we're stoked to have her here today.
Thank you. I am stoked to be here.
Just a note. So welcome to the stream, of course. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We'll be Sarah and I will be monitoring the chat, and we'll bring it to the video when there's a good moment. So feel free to ask away, and yeah, have fun.
Yeah, and so, I would like to encourage you guys to interrupt me if anything needs a bit of clarification, or if anyone has a question. I'm super happy to take questions.
Sounds amazing. I'm excited. I love your space, by the way. I feel like you're it looks like you do what you do.
Because it's a big mess and there's keyboards everywhere. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. It's very pink, which is...
I particularly love the bust of... Is that Bach?
That's Bach. Yeah, I did a virtual performance last month that had some Bach involved in it, so I thought that was funny.
Is it 3D printed?
No, it's from Winners.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Even better.
Less cool. Way less cool. It was like...
Anyway. Is it on sale, though?
It was on sale. I used to be a piano teacher. It's a whole thing. Should I share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. All right. That's Pro Tools. We don't need to get into that yet. I made a little presentation to help me keep on track, and if anyone would like to access it, it is on my website, michellelacour.com, under the Educator tab. And if you are interested in mixing and would like to learn more, definitely go and check this out, because I link to some good articles and stuff in it if there's any topics that you really want to know more about. Cool. So how do I scroll? How do I use a computer? It's difficult. There we go. So yeah, about me, Sarah did a good job of introducing me. Thank you, Sarah. I am an audio engineer. I do recording, mixing, and mastering of music, mostly here in St. John's. Definitely here in St. John's over the past 2 years. And yeah, I used to live in Montreal. I did my master's in sound recording at McGill University. Kind of like hesitant to tell people that sometimes because I don't want anyone to think that you need a master's degree to be a good audio engineer. That is just one of many ways to go about learning audio, and that's the path that I took, but it's not necessary for everyone. Although I did really enjoy my time at McGill and I learned a lot there. I do live sound and technical direction for a couple of festivals and conferences. I do live sound at bars and other venues, and yeah, I do editing for film, sound design, and composition for film. Just so that everybody knows what I'm using Pro Tools 11 on an old Mac. I'm running Mac OS 10.12. I know a lot of people probably aren't going to be using Pro Tools, but the concepts are the same. Like, it's just going to look like a bit of a different interface. I also use Logic sometimes and Ableton Live, but I decided to use Pro Tools today because I'm fast with it and I didn't want to slow myself down by trying to use Logic. And I wanted to say this right away is a very big thank you to all of the amazing St. John's artists who have let me use their music today in this. And to Sarah and Elling and LV and Unpossible and RPM and everyone. The artists I'll be talking about are Valmy, Property, which is of course Sarah's band, and Hello will be in my mixing portions of the day, and then Soap Opera and Wiley for the mastering portions. And I encourage everyone to go and check them out because they're all amazing artists with great music. Hopefully I do it justice. Yeah, so this is kind of my starting point. 2 things, if you remember them, that will help you throughout your mixing process. Organization. I always label my mixes year, month, day, my song, like whatever the song is, so that it's easy to revert back to an old mix. If you save your Logic sessions as folders instead of packages, then your session files are super small. And it can be really, really helpful. Like, if you screw something up and you don't realize it for a long time and then you're like, oh crap, if you can just go back to yesterday's session, then that is a huge help. Also, if you are mixing too late into the evening and you are tired and you get up the next day and listen to your song, you think this sounds like garbage, you can revert back to the one that you were working on the day before. Which leads me to this point, fatigue. You want to take breaks when you're mixing, and especially when you're mastering. Listener fatigue is real. It affects your ability to be objective, and if you're mixing when you're tired, then yeah, it can have less than amazing results. Yeah, so I'll start now by going into Pro Tools. You'll see in Pro Tools that I have 2 windows. I have my edit window and my mix window. This is how I like to work. I can put them next to each other in small sessions like this, but I usually just command tilde through them, which allows you to shuffle through windows in the same piece of software. Even when I'm working on Logic, I do this. I open my mix window in a separate window, and instead of being like docked in the screen. Yeah, it just makes my life easier. So I decided to start with this because this is basically the simplest kind of recording that I will ever do. This is one microphone in front of the incredible singer Valmy, who is a singer-songwriter and plays the acoustic guitar. And the reason that I only used one microphone for this was because it was for a video, and I have a couple of screenshots there. So we wanted to make sure that the mic wasn't visible for the video. These were shot for the Three Sisters, which is a pub in Placentia that had a really great music series that they put off in 2020 that I was involved in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off all of my effects, and just, so when they're dark blue, that means they're turned off, they're bypassed. So I'm going to turn off all my effects and just play us the raw audio here.
Oh, it's really coming down now.
So I was very happy with how this sounded, especially for just one mic and trying to keep it out of the shot. But there's always room for improvement. So I started here, and again, this is still in bypass mode. I started here with just some very gentle compression and EQ, and this looks overwhelming. Don't worry, we're going to learn all about this. So I'll start by talking about EQ, equalization. It's basically three things in your toolkit when you're talking about EQ. You've got filters, shelves, and bells. And these are just different ways of affecting the sound. You've got, or like different shapes. This will become clearer when I go back over to Pro Tools. You've got frequency, which if anyone is like unclear as to what frequency is, that's the like mathematical measurement of a pitch. So, you know, you've got low frequency sounds like bass, and then high frequency sounds like guitar, and then higher frequency sounds like violins. So it's just, yeah, it's just a pitch basically. Gain, similar to gain on a guitar amp or a microphone preamp. And then Q, which is, I actually didn't know what it stood for. It stands for quality factor. But it's just how sharp you're being with your bells. So we'll talk about that over here now. So I'm going to turn my EQ and my compressor dynamics off, and listen to this again. And I'm just gonna start from scratch. Boom. And the way that I'm clearing things, if anyone is curious, on a Mac, it's Option click. So you make everything go back to where it was to begin with. So let's have a listen to this.
Wild heart survive, raw and hungry in the night.
So I'm listening to this and I'm thinking it sounds really lovely, but it's, when I listen to like the sound of the slides on the guitar and the quality of Valmy's voice, I think that I personally want a little more like high end on it.
To try to rebuild the soul, find meaning in the spaces.
And what I'll do is I'll turn it off.
First saw time as a friend, oh, but I felt a crack start to.
And listen to it, turning the EQ on and off, and seeing like, am I actually making a difference here? Is this doing what I want it to do? And I think it is. And then, yeah, I'll just keep listening.
You've been putting out a fight when body's calling for your bed.
And I think like, when I'm listening to this, I think that I want to have a little bit more warmth in the sound. Nothing too crazy. I don't want it to be like wah wah wah, but I want a little bit more warmth. So I'll listen. And then sometimes I'll be like really dramatic with this and move it around until I find, sorry, that was probably distorted, until I find the spot where I want to have my EQ, and then I'll just bring it back down and chill out a little bit with it. So this is a situation where I'm going to want to adjust my Q. So I didn't mention this before, sorry, should have, but this here is a shelf. I can see it down here. Your EQ definitely has this bell versus shelf option as well. Shelves are used to affect low frequencies or high frequencies. The difference in a shelf and a bell, if I change that to a bell, you can see it makes a bell shape, and it has like a terminal point, whereas a shelf doesn't have a terminal point. It just keeps going like out of the range of human hearing, which is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So I'm using a shelf here because I just want more high end. I want it to be a little more sparkly. And then I'm using a bell here in this area because I don't want to affect the entire low frequency spectrum. I just want to affect this one area. Now when I'm listening and going around and trying to find my spot, I may want my bell to not be quite so shallow, and that's where your Q factor comes in. So if you sharpen your Q, then you're more precise with your EQ. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add a low cut or a high pass here. I add a low cut on every channel that doesn't have a lot of low frequency information. So the lowest note on a guitar is like 80 hertz or something. There's no bass in this song. There's no kick drum or anything. So I'm going to cut, I'm not going to like go all the way up to 80, but I'm going to cut off a lot of what's down here. And the reason for that is that, you know, the threshold of human hearing is 20 hertz. We're like, a kick drum is like 60 hertz for usually around there, except for obviously that's not a rule, but generally around there. So I know that there's not any information down here, and I want to save my room in my mix. So what happens if you had, for example, a bunch of tracks that none of them had a high pass on them? You're gonna end up with like just a lot of like rumble and stuff, like room sound, noise, just stuff that isn't like a musical quality to your signal down in this area. And all of that rumble and room sound and whatever else is going to add up on top of each other, and then that's going to clog up your headroom. So yeah, headroom is how much you can push a system above its expected threshold before you get distortion. The word headroom is also used to talk about like how much sound you can pass through your system. So if you are, I find this a lot when I'm in Logic, if you're constantly in the red, then you have exceeded the expected threshold of that system. And maybe one way of getting around that is to go and see if you're sending a bunch of low frequency content unnecessarily to your master bus. There's 2 links on this page. That this one is just a more in-depth explanation of what headroom is. This is if you want to get really, really good at EQ, go to webtet.net. This is technical ear training, and you can do exercises and teach yourself about EQ, how to identify certain frequencies. You'll see me making a lot of moves that are that I'm just, it may seem like I'm doing it like willy-nilly, but I have just been doing this for a long time, and I know roughly what frequencies I'm hearing and looking for often. And okay, and then
What was that link again? I'm going to post it in the chat.
Oh yeah,
webtet.net.
webtet.net. Yeah, if you Google search technical ear training, it will come up as well. We had to do this every semester at McGill, and it was probably the most useful part of my master's degree. It is so helpful. It's also like kind of a fun party trick.
Is it like Duolingo? Do they get in touch with you if you're not training yourself every day?
No, it's on you.
It's on you. It's all on you.
Okay, I hope that's like clear about EQ so far. I'm gonna spend like a fair bit of time in this session because it's a simple session, and it gives me a lot of opportunity to talk about these various, like, the basics. One thing I didn't talk about yet is your room and your equipment that you're mixing on. That can have a huge, huge, huge impact on how you perceive your work. So it's important to know your room. I have a couple of songs that I am like intimately familiar with that I use to like test a system. Like the other day, my friend was like, try these earbuds. And so I put them on and queued up Black Hole Sun and was like, no, this doesn't sound right. It's Black Hole Sun and it's a Bach keyboard concerto for mine.
Ooh.
But it is. Everyone has different ones. But yeah, so know your room and test your mixes on different systems if you can, even like different pairs of headphones. Like I know that this room, the layout of it, I find it hard to hear bass sometimes. So I will just go in the adjacent room sometimes and listen to a song and it sounds different. I have a shelf full of like shitty, I probably shouldn't swear, cheap headphones that I use to test things on. I had someone tell me the other day that they were having trouble with a mix and they couldn't hear the bass on their system, so I plugged in a pair of headphones from Dollarama, and I was like, well, I can hear it on these Dollarama headphones. So I think it might be your system. But yeah, the only thing I would caution against if you're checking on different sets of headphones is if you have like DJ headphones, then they usually pump up the bass, so beware. But yeah, your room can make a huge difference, and the setup where your speakers are, everything. I'm lucky that I have high ceilings here and this room is like slanted because right angles can be a problem. But yeah, so fun stuff. Let's talk about compression. Compression makes the loud parts quiet and the quiet parts loud. Compression is used to reduce the amount of dynamic range in a piece of music so that all aspects of the song sound equal and can be heard across different systems. There is definitely such thing as too much compression. So these are the things on most compressors, and there's often others as well, but these are what we're gonna talk about today. So I love the stock compressor in Pro Tools, and I decided today that I was going to try to use all stock plugins or free plugins or cheap plugins because I definitely am not of the mind that you need to spend a bunch of money to get a good mix. I just don't subscribe to that way of thinking. So what I'm going to do with my compressor is I'm going to find a part of the song where I have like a loud part next to a quiet part, which looks like this to me. I've got a big waveform and a little waveform. And I'm going to start with a gentle compressor of like 2:1. So this is my ratio. The ratio is how much compressing we're doing. So how much the signal needs to pass over the threshold before it starts compressing. And the threshold is where or when we start compressing. So if I look at this, if I were to move my threshold all the way down to like minus 35 dB, this signal is going to be really compressed, even though it's still pretty gentle. And then if I turn my threshold up, we're going to hear that get louder. Right? So that's the practical application of that. There are so many places. So you can see here in the quiet parts, my compressor is not engaging at all, which I'm fine with. But I do want these loud parts to be attenuated a little bit so that they are closer to the same perceived volume as the rest of the song. So I'm just going to listen to that again. I'm going to take it back and listen again. And I think I'm pretty happy with how my compressor is attenuating this loud signal. I might run around to other parts of the song and have a listen, but for now, in the interest of time, I will leave it at that. Knee is not on all compressors. It's basically just like, well, you have a sharp knee or a gentle knee. I find that that's pretty self-explanatory. Attack and release are on all compressors. The attack is how quickly gain reduction occurs, and then the release is like the opposite. It's how quickly the compressor lets go. And where you're really going to see that come into effect is when you're mixing drums, because they have such a quick transient, quick attack. So when you're mixing drums, say like you have a snare hit, your snare hit is probably like 40 milliseconds. That's when most of your sound is occurring. So if I had my attack set to 190 milliseconds, well, my compressor is not going to catch that snare. So I have to make sure that my attack is set lower. There's other times when you might want a higher attack, and it's also really useful, I find, to experiment by changing this and listening and seeing how it sounds. Because the number one tenet of mixing is to mix with your ears, not your eyes. I see people all the time like trying to draw their automation data in a really beautiful way, and I'm like, I do not care if it sounds right, then it is right. So it doesn't matter what you do as long as the end result sounds correct. And then the release is how quickly the compressor stops compressing. So again, you're going to see that mostly in drums. But yeah. Not going to make as much of a difference on a track like this. And then gain. So once you compress your signal, it's often quieter. So you may want to add a bit of gain. I'm not going to worry about that at this stage because I don't need to worry about it yet on this kind of song. So I'm just going to leave my gain at 0, which is totally respectable thing to do in my opinion. Cool. So I like this song. I think it sounds good. I'm going to bypass. And I like it better with my effects on it, so I am happy to move on now to the next step of the process. One thing, yes.
Can I hear the difference again?
Yeah. No, please. And yeah, another thing, if you're listening on laptop speakers and stuff, some of this might be subtle and might be hard to hear for people out there. So you'll see when it's bypassed, it's dark blue.
Right.
There are so many places to try to rebuild a soul, find meaning in the spaces.
And actually take the shelf down a little bit because it's a little sparkly.
As a friend, oh, but I felt a crack.
Oh yeah.
To mend.
So yeah, it's good to also to turn it off and turn it back on again and make sure you actually like what you've done.
I have one question from that was referring to something earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Jing Xia asked what. Yeah, you know her. What are the easy ways to decorate the room to make it better for recording?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Yeah. So understanding your room and understanding like what your problems are in the room is going to help in a big way. I find generally if people are doing home recording, the biggest issue that they have is too many reflections. And we're going to talk about that very soon when we get into reverb. But basically just the sound is bouncing around the room in unpleasant ways. And of course, if that's happening, then that's going to get stuck in your recording and it's going to be very difficult to deal with. So for the most part, people can try to deaden their room. So if you put down a rug on the floor, then that's going to soak up a lot of the sound rather than having it bounce off of like a hardwood floor. I know someone who records a lot of classical guitar at their home, and they took their mom's quilts and hung them behind where they sit so that it would absorb some of the reflections rather than having them bounce off the walls. Sarah
Just like
and I,
laundry laying around.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't look great, but it works.
No, yeah.
If all of these shelves were empty, this room would sound very different. So if you're going to have a bookshelf anyway, maybe move it into the room that you're recording in. Yeah, absorption and diffusion is the other thing. So just having objects in the room. You know, when you move into a new apartment and the rooms are all empty, it sounds really empty in there. It sounds really different than once you get your couch in there. So yeah, that's helpful for recording. A rug makes a huge difference. And then also your own position in the room. So are you backed onto a wall or are you in the middle of the room? That kind of a thing. If your room is long and narrow, try both ways and see what way sounds better, like being at the short end or being at the long end. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Rick Bailey he said that the bookshelf behind you is probably good for that, and you just said it was.
Love that. Hi,
yeah,
everyone.
answered the question before, answered the comment before. You even knew it was there. Benny Chop on Twitch, he says to compare the wave of loud and quiet part, could we see what the waveform looks by bouncing it or flattening?
You could bounce it out with your effects on and and then re-import it into your session. But I would caution against doing that too much in the mixing phase because I think that you're going to get the same result just playing it and listening. Like if I listen to this part.
Places to try to rebuild the soul.
You know, I can hear that there's not like a huge difference in dynamic energy throughout that line. If I take my compressor off.
Places to try to rebuild the soul.
You know, there's more of a change in dynamic energy. So I would caution against doing stuff like that encourages you to use your eyes. It's definitely helpful at some point, especially when you get to the final stages or you get to the mastering stage. But for now, I would say you can figure it out with your ears. Yeah, I can try like cranking my compressor up and then maybe I'll add a bit of makeup gain. You know, and I know that sounds bad. I don't need oh wait.
It's like rock radio level.
Yeah, it's Metallica.
Places to try to rebuild. Places to try.
That's another thing. I don't use an EQ with an analyzer. I just don't think it's necessary. I also find that like when people look at the analyzer, sometimes it encourages them to do the opposite of what they want to do. So yeah, I'm a big use your ears person. And you know, that can be like these cheap moves like this, where I'm just like wiggling around trying to hear like
the sweet spots.
Yeah, I'm like, what is the frequency that I want? I do this all the time if I'm trying to find the ring in a snare drum. You know, just like sweep.
Places to try to rebuild
There
the
it
soul.
is. This EQ also has the listen function, which will play you just that frequency,
Cool.
which can be handy. But not all EQs have that, so I didn't want to talk about it too much. Yeah, oh yeah, and when I'm dragging this dot up and down, making the bell bigger, that's my gain. So it works the same in the other way. If I wanted to take that frequency out, oops, then it would do that too.
One last question
Yeah.
before we move on from Tamorash. Are those foam mic isolation shield things effective for recording voice, I assume?
The ones that go around the back of the mic?
Yeah, I think probably the half circle things.
They really are. Yeah, I kind of like was like, do those do anything? And then my dear friend Josh Ward was using one when he was recording like a group to try to get more isolation on the soloist, and it does really work. So yeah.
Amazing.
Pop filters also, if we're talking about things that go on microphones, pop filters are your friend. I have recorded before, like with someone singing into a 57, because again, it was for a video and it looked cool. And I was like kicking myself after because there were so many pops because I didn't have a pop filter. If you don't have a pop filter, you can make one out of a wire coat hanger and an old pair of nylons. Just maybe not the stinky foot.
choose a non-foot part.
Or just like a clean pair with a run in them.
These are the real pro secrets.
Yeah, the real pro secrets. I'm also just going to mention, I was going to hide this track, but I decided to leave it here. This track is here because it's, this was my edit track. So I actually edited this together out of a couple of takes. And then I denoised it, which is what all of these numbers indicate up here, because there were a few like cracks and pops and stuff. If you are having noise on your recording that you literally can't deal with, you can get a free trial version of Isotope, and I will show that in another session in a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Can I move on to Reverb?
Absolutely.
Reverb. So fun.
Reverb.
This is the Thank you for that demonstration. This is the ultimate tenet of using a compressor. Does it sound better or is it just louder? Sometimes I even fall prey to this. No one is safe. But yeah, that's why I also tend to like be pretty chill about my makeup gain at this point in the game, because louder is better. We all like louder stuff. It's really funny, but it's just how humans are. Oh yeah, this is my break to talk about buses. I use buses for my effects, except for reverb, compression, and EQ, which I tend to drop, and saturation, which is distortion. Reverb, sorry, I think I said all the wrong things. I put EQ, compression, and distortion on the track. All my effects, like reverb and delay, and sometimes compression if I'm using it to like creative effect, I put those on buses. Why do I do this? Organization, so I can stay more organized in my sessions. Subgroups, for example, if I'm recording a group and I want to have a bunch of instruments, like say I get my drums mixed and then I like the level but I might have to move it up or down, you can use buses as subgroups. I don't have to do that in Pro Tools because it has a built-in group function, but if it didn't, then I would be doing this. Ease and intuition, I find it's a lot more intuitive for me to turn my reverb up here than to open up this send and adjust my reverb in there where I can't see it, or to open up a plugin and fiddle with the mix. It's just so much more intuitive to have it there on a strip in your mix window. It's pro. That's it. And then also CPU considerations. If I'm sending my fiddle, my acoustic guitar, and my cello all to the same reverb, why am I going to have 3 instances of the same reverb, one on each channel, when I could just have one instance on one strip here, nice and tidy, and yeah, adjust it accordingly. So that's my speech about buses. I like buses.
Acapella Wolf on Twitch made a great comment. Buses are great, but you wait for ages for one and then 3 come along at once.
That's good.
I think it's a different kind of bus.
I think it's a different kind of bus. But that's great. I know people who use Logic. I'm going to talk about Logic a lot because it's the other DAW that I use because I love the software instruments and the amp simulators. But people who use Logic hate using buses. Logic makes it really, really user-friendly to not use buses, but it's going to be a game changer for your mix, I promise. So that's my speech about buses. Anyone who I have ever talked to about mixing is laughing now because I say this every time. But yeah, CPU considerations is a big one. So, talking about reverb.
I just noticed the actual picture of a bus.
Oh, yeah. It's clip art. You're welcome. Beep, beep. All aboard the reverb
Correct
bus.
change only.
Pardon?
Correct change only. That's my tag. Continue.
I
Don't
love
mind
it.
me. Don't mind me.
Perfect. I love the commentary. It's weird giving a workshop to your computer and like not having any engagement, so I'm really happy you're here. We're gonna talk about reverb. So why did I just go on a weird tangent about buses? Because I put my reverb on a bus here, and or I put my reverb on an aux channel, and I send my audio to it using a bus or a send. So another thing that I find that Logic users do, this is just me bashing Logic users, is you don't turn your bus up to unity. You'll like have your bus like down here or something, and that kind of, in my workflow, that kind of negates the function of me using a strip at all. So when I send my audio to a track, first of all, I name the track. This is insane. I never have things labeled like audio 1, but it's literally one mic, so I let myself get away with it. I label it. This is going to be my reverb. My send level is unity. This means follow main pan. And then I have my channel here, and then I use this to adjust the level. In my plugin, my mix is at 100%. So this is the only spot where I'm making adjustments. I'm not going into the plugin and making mix adjustments in there. I know in some other DAWs, you've got like dry and wet, and you can mix those signals in. I find this much more intuitive. So I always have my mix up at 100%, and then I make my adjustments on there.
What if you want less of one thing in the reverb?
That's when you do use these. Yeah. And that's the times that I do use that. Like if I'm doing the fiddle, acoustic guitar, cello kind of thing, then I'll make my adjustments in there. If I'm like, oh, it sounds good, but the fiddle is like, could use a little less reverb on it. And there is a way to expand these. There you go. So you can see it. It's just really tiny. So yeah. But thank you for that. So
Thanks.
The next thing I do, and I do this unless I'm on a drum bus, I pretty much always do this. I put a 1-band EQ in, and I put a low cut on it so that I am not sending low frequency information to my reverb, because I do not want that information to have reverb on it. Then I'm just taking up more headroom on my master bus. So, I'll set this to like, I don't know, 100's a little high, maybe like 85 or something. And that's it. It's a tiny little plugin. It's a 1-band EQ. It doesn't take up much CPU. So this is my reverb that I love to use. It is $50 on ValhallaDSP.com. It is called Valhalla Vintage. I love it. It's got lots of awesome features, but this is not a Valhalla commercial. So I'm going to use Deverb, which is the stock reverb that comes with Pro Tools, which I thought I hated, but I am learning to love it. So I will often, especially with reverb, start with a preset. I sometimes do with EQ and compression, but I find that it really is just a starting place. But with reverb, I start with a preset. So say I start with large hall dark. Let's start with this all the way up and see how crazy it sounds. Let's go somewhere where there's some singing.
Body's calling for your bed.
That's very long. That's very long, but how do I change that, and what do all of these words mean? Let's go back over here and talk about it for a bit. Reverb, you basically use it to fake space. When I listened to this recording, I was like, sounds great, but it's a little dry. That's often the case. If you're not doing like a classical music recording, then you're probably putting your mics really close to your source. So you have to put some fake space on there. Pre-delay is the time before the early reflections. And then there's going to be something called reverb time or decay or RT60. That is a little bit more complicated. That is basically the time that it takes for the sound pressure level of the reflections to decrease by 60 decibels. Makes perfect sense. Just kidding. It's basically how long your reverb is. So a great big cavernous concert hall is going to have a reverb of like 8 seconds or 12 seconds. A room is going to have a much shorter reverb of like 1.5 seconds or something like that. To think about the difference between early reflections and late reflections, imagine yourself sitting in a concert hall in like a cheap seat over by the wall, and the sound is gonna, say you're up front and you're by the stage and you're by the wall, the sound is gonna bounce off of the wall, or bounce off of, if you're performing, bounce off of the floor or the wall behind you or even your instrument. And those are your early reflections. Your late reflections are when the sound bounces off other places in the room that are this is helpful, that are farther away from you, and reflects a little later. Sound is just wavy air. It's just sound waves. Anything that reflects light is also going to reflect sound because it's all just waves. We're going to talk about diffusion. That is the dispersion or density of the reflections. Basically, if you have a high, I made notes about this, if you have a high diffusion, then your reverb is going to have a smoother sound. If you have a low diffusion, then your reverb is going to have a more like chattery sound. And then damping is the absorption of high frequencies. So sometimes you want your reverb to be like really sparkly and you want the high frequencies to, decay out and go on forever. And sometimes that sounds unnatural or it's not what you're looking for. So that's what damping is. Most reverbs have these options. Many of them have many, many more. Here's an Isotope link. Isotope's learning series is like really good for learning. They will, of course, try to sell you plugins because they are a plugin company. You don't have to buy them. Just take advantage of all this free educational material. Oh, that's later. Oh, that's exciting. So I'm going to go in here. I often start with my pre-delay at nothing because I want to hear those early reflections right away, especially in like an intimate song like this. But I think this is too long. I'm gonna go in here and try like 2.7, which I just pulled out of the air. Like I did not use any method to come up with that number.
A 0.7 sounded very like specific though.
I feel like somewhere in my mind 2.7 seconds is back there, but I can't tell you why.
She ain't a friend of mine.
And then I have to decide, is it too much reverb or is it too long? So I'll take it down.
She ain't a friend of mine, no.
I'm gonna crank the diffusion up and see what that sounds like.
She ain't a friend of mine.
It sounds a little less obvious now to me, the reverb, so I'm gonna turn it back up a little bit.
She ain't a friend of mine.
This here, this says HF cut. I'm assuming that means high frequency cut and that is damping. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn my low pass filter off as well. I honestly don't know what these are doing exactly, so I'm going to listen.
She ain't a friend of mine, no. Whether or not I chose.
I don't know if you guys are hearing that. I'm hearing that it sounds a bit sparkly. It's sounding a little shiny for my liking. So I'm gonna put this back in, but I'm gonna be pretty liberal with it and put it up at 10,000 hertz. That's like that's pretty high. The only thing up there is like air and like maybe a sizzle on a cymbal.
She ain't a friend of mine, no, whether or not
And then I'm gonna mute my
I
reverb.
chose to pretend.
Oh wow.
Oh, I felt a crack start to mend.
Maybe even a little less.
Darling, I felt a crack start to mend.
Cool. So yeah, this is like, I spent forever on this one song, but hopefully it is helpful. Yeah. I'm gonna move on from this now because I could literally just spend the entire day on this one song and we'd be here until 8 p.m.
Oh man. Charles Harding says 2.7 is close to the value of E, which I don't know what it is.
I don't know what that is either, but I like it, and that's why I picked it.
Exponentials.
Yeah, maybe.
Will Ginsburg says, any rules of thumb for how much reverb to use? So for example, does rock music usually have a medium room amount of reverb or something?
Man, whatever feels right.
Whatever feels right, man. Do whatever.
Yeah, really, like, it's whatever you want. It depends on the genre for sure. Like, I know that my big blind spot is with like hip hop production. Like, I don't do a lot of that. When I've done live sound for hip hop shows, I have to like ask people, like, tell me if I'm doing anything stupid, because it's not a genre that I'm super familiar with. But I know that like rap vocals tend to be pretty dry and like in your face. So that's another way to think of it too, is like the drier it is, the more like in your face it's going to be, and you may want that for a rock vocal or something, whereas for like a ballad or something with like a lot of synths, you might want more reverb. Sometimes on a vocal I'll use 2 reverbs. I'll use a short one and a long one and mix them as I see fit.
Acapella Wolf on Twitch says Valhalla Supermassive is free.
It is free, and they also have, I think, Frequency Echo that used to be free, and it might still be. So yeah, Valhalla puts out free plugins. You can also find lots of free plugins by going to Plugin Boutique and clicking free. Yeah, I tried to get some for this workshop, but my computer is too old to run most of them, so...
And once you sign up for Plugin Boutique, you'll get emails from them every single day.
Yes, you have to unsubscribe, or else you'll be like, it's only $29. I should get that Waves plugin. And yeah, like I said, I don't.
But it's on sale.
I don't have a tremendous amount of plugins. I just thankfully never went down that road. So I know people who do. The other thing I want to say is using Pro Tools doesn't make you a pro. The best DAW is the one that you know how to use. If Studio One or like Cakewalk or like any of these old softwares are the ones that you like, then just keep using them. The only thing I would caution against is exclusively using Audacity if you can help it. Audacity is amazing for recording. It's free software. It's fantastic. But it's not really a DAW because you can't process audio in the same way. You have to like render all your effects. And that can be really annoying. But if it's all you got, use it. It's fun. So, I, as always, am going to run out of time, but I'm going to do as much as I can here in this session by my dear friend Nick Benza, also known as Hello, who I've had the pleasure of recording with, mixing with, mastering with, and playing with. And Ellen told me that a lot of people out there in the virtual world are making electronic music. And I didn't have a lot of electronic music in my toolkit to draw from, so I asked Nick if he would please send me a track so that I could use it, and he did, because he's the best. So, here it is. You will notice that everything is a stereo file. Some of these tracks already have effects baked into them, so I am working with them. The first thing I did is I came in here and organized this the way that I like to organize things, which is vocals, guitar, bass, keyboards, drums, and then extras at the end. Next, I'm going to very quickly, and I labeled everything. Actually, I think Nick labeled everything because he's the best. But having everything labeled can make your life way easier. If this was audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, I would tear my hair out. I have colors that I use for my tracks. Sounds silly to you? I don't care. It helps me. Keyboards are purple. Drums are mint. And auxiliary percussion is red. I use the same colors every single time I do a session. I've been doing it since 2014. It makes my life easier. It will make your life easier if you choose to do it. So what I did when I got this session from Nick is I loaded everything in and I hit play. And I thought, wow, it sounds amazing. How am I ever going to use this? It's too good. So then what I did is I went through and soloed every track and listened to it and thought, what does this need? How can I improve it? So start with my guitars. And I decided that they were a little dark for me. So I took this down a bit and I wanted a little bit more bite from them. Pretty subtle, but it's there. I put compression on it. I did the same thing I did in the last one, so I won't go over that again. Oh wait, did I have the bypass on that whole time? That'd be embarrassing. And then without the compression, oh, it's a different part of the song. You can hear the difference there. So yeah, I went in and did that. I went to the bass channel. Find a lot of time with DI'd bass. I'm a bit more loony with my EQ than I am with other things. I often like crank up the bass. I'm still putting in a little thing on here, so I'm not a little low cut filter on here, so that I'm not like totally sending oodles of rumble to my to the rest of my life. This is really fun when you're EQing bass. Oftentimes, if people want more bass, they're like more low end, and you're just going to end up with a bunch of like flabby, muddy low end that you can't do anything with. Finding the frequency where like the finger sounds on the strings are will help your bass cut through the mix more than just cranking up your low end until you can't hear anything else. So yeah, like I want some more low end. That's without it. What's that? But then yeah, you know, I don't want this weird honky sound. But like around here, I like that. And then I took this down a little bit because I didn't want too much in this region here, which is like often a bit undefined. Put some gentle compression on there. It's a pretty steady signal, so I didn't feel the need to use a whole lot of it. The main synth. I wanted this to be sparklier and brighter, so I did this. And then one thing with the main synth, when I get a track from somebody else, I don't assume that things are like mistakes. I assume that they're taking creative control of their own work. But I did find when I listened to the whole track that this was leaning a bit left heavy. So I used this plugin here, which is a multi-channel plugin, and unlinked my two channels, and I turned the right up by 3.4 dB because I wanted it to be across the stereo field more evenly. Using the stereo field is a huge part of mixing and something I hope to talk about if I get to my next song, but Elling might have to stop me before then.
We got time.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay, I can go forever, but
all night.
But yeah, if you don't mind going a little bit over, then I'll try to breeze through this and then pop open my next session. Mastering won't take nearly as long as mixing. But yeah, again, this is the extra synth channel. I found that these were a bit dark for my liking, so I put a bit of EQ on there. Yeah, and then we get into Drumland, which is really fun. There's your kick. Sounds like a kick to me. But I thought, again, similar to the bass, that it could have more low end and a bit more bite. There's some different kick sounds in there, but yeah. So yeah, I'm not going too crazy with this, but that's what I'm doing.
One question. Sorry, I know. When with the bass that you were doing earlier, Salman asked on YouTube asked, since you're doing low cuts on tracks with mostly high frequencies, do you also do a high cut on tracks focused on the lower frequencies like bass?
I do not use high cuts in the same way because high frequencies don't take up as much headroom as low frequencies, so I'm generally less worried about them. The other thing is that a lot of instruments and microphones can't reproduce high frequencies, so there's generally not going to be a whole lot of information there anyway. I'll do it sometimes for sure, but it's more so a creative effect than a technical consideration. But it's a really good question. Yeah, it just basically, if you think about the sound waves again, like the bass sound waves are longer and they take up more room. That's really important when you're mastering things for vinyl as well, to consider that. But yeah, the high frequencies, like a lot of microphones are not picking up content that's like above this range anyway, so there's just not a whole lot up there. Yeah, excellent question. So sometimes what I'll do with a kick, oh, there's a kick. If I want it to be like a bit gritty, I'll actually duplicate the track. And this is just like for fun. And put some distortion on it, and then I'll mix them together. So this one, I started with this preset called Warm Drums. It kind of like didn't really do anything for me. So, oh yeah, a bit of drive, a bit of low end. I don't usually put distortion right on the track. I'll usually duplicate the track and mix them together like this, because somebody told me one time that putting distortion on a track can like affect your low end, and I haven't taken the time to like read papers about that and actually figure out if it's true or not. But this is my practice for now, and I think it's probably best practice. If you listen to a kick drum with distortion on it, it does kind of sound like your low end gets a little feeble. So that's like sounds completely insane and sick, and I love it, but it might be too much, so just add it in to add a little bite. Nice. Because I'm on Pro Tools, I'm a lucky duck, and I can group these into a group called Kick, so that now they move around together, which is nice. A snare.
What does grouping do? It's
Oh, it allows
like
me to adjust them together.
Oh, okay.
That's it. If I solo them, it solos both of them. That kind of thing. I think if I was recording, it would let me record them at the same time. I'll usually, well, I'll show you more about grouping now in a second. Again, it's not a thing in all DAWs, so I try not to focus too much on it, but if you do have the option to put things in a group, it can be really easy, or it can be really, really nice, really great to do. Yeah, I think I listened to this and was like, it sounds great. Gated reverb on there, nice choice, Nick. Nah, doesn't really need much, in my opinion. And then cymbals. Yeah, just didn't do anything here either, just a low cut. So, I'll keep going and then here's the aux percussion. If you notice, there's a lot of like different sounds in this track. Clapping, shaking, different kinds of shakers, finger snapping. And I found that some of them, especially like the finger snapping, was getting lost for me. So I actually put like a pretty intense compressor on this so that I could even out the dynamics a little bit more. If I take it off. So some things are like poking out a lot more. And now they're a bit more even in dynamic. Dynamic means like volume level, just in case I've never explained that. Here it's going to be important for me to have my attack low on my compressor so that everything is actually hitting the compressor and not sneaking in. Using a hard knee because I don't mind if the compressor cuts in with a lot of intensity. Yeah, and I've got my threshold pretty low. That's the thing here. This ratio could probably even be higher. I generally am pretty subtle with compressors, but yeah, it's because I come from a classical background and we like to keep things sounding natural. Also for this, I just wanted like a lot of high-end rather than mid-range stuff. If you have too much stuff that's like high in the mid-range, generally happens if people are using like a lot of organs on a track, then it can get a bit like muddy sounding. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. So I've gone through all my tracks one by one except for my vocal because I'm saving that for later. And then I'm going to listen to my drums and get a good mix going on them. I'm going to bring in my aux percussion. Cool. And I'm pretty happy with the way that this is sounding. So what I'm going to do now, because I can, is put them all in a group called Perk for Percussion. If I did not have groups, because I was working in a DAW, I might think I was working in a DAW that didn't have one. I might think to myself like, wow, this is so sad. I don't have groups. I wish I did. Damn. But you can make one. Go make an aux. Send the input of the aux to bus 3 and 4, and then set the output of these 3 channels to bus 3 and 4. How do I do that so that they all happen at once? Yeah, I know my keyboard shortcuts. That on a Mac is Shift Option for the highlighted tracks. And so now, if I solo these, I'm not going to hear anything. But if I solo this, nope, solo save. There's all my percussion in one track, so now I can turn it all up and down at the same time. I hope that makes sense. Rewind it and watch it again, or Google it if it didn't. Again, I don't need to do this because of the way the Pro Tools works, but if you do, this is called a subgroup, and it can be very, very useful. So, we have our drums. Let's add our bass. So funky. Now let's add our guitars.
Oh.
Bring in that main synth. Fond memories of playing with this band. Okay, one more of that, but I might be biased. Let's go back to somewhere where that lead is. Or no, this is the extra synth, sorry. Hard not to dance to that. Good job, Nick. So yeah, I'm finding myself fairly happy with the general mix that I have so far. Obviously, I'm not going to spend too much time on this right now in front of you all. So then let's unsolo everything and
So well recorded that there's minimal amount that you need to do.
Yeah, that was helpful. Of course, all of the techniques that I'm using can be used on less well-recorded things as well. You just may be a bit more dramatic in your use of EQ and compression, like I am when I record myself, because I'm not a great player.
I disagree.
Thank you. So let's hop into our vocal track, and let's just for fun, let's start with a preset. Let's start with male vocal. So what's this doing for me? Interestingly, male vocal puts a filter on here but has it bypassed. I'm not sure why. And they put quite a dramatic EQ up here in the high end. Pretty relaxed compression, probably what I would end up doing something like anyway. But yeah. Oh yeah, if you're like mixing like screamo or something, you're gonna want like a pretty serious compressor on your vocal probably, which is fun.
Sweating bullets in my ball cap. Tired of.
So when I listen to this, I'm like, wow, wrong choice channel strip. that was not what we needed. Let's take those EQs off. Let's zero everything. Let's see what this actually sounds like.
Sweating bullets in my ball cap.
Yeah, so I'd actually be inclined to do like maybe the opposite of what they did.
Calling in to say I'm homesick.
Take down some of this.
It's been too long since I spent the
Right,
day
it's like a bit of sibilance in the vocal.
bed.
So I would maybe be inclined to do something that's pretty subtle down there.
I hear my echoes bouncing
Ooh,
in the
all the vocals
dark.
in one channel. Sick.
Brand new paint job on my mood ring.
That's sounding alright. Let's see how it fits in the mix.
Brand new paint job on my mood ring.
Oh, I might want that a little louder.
Now I never feel blue or red. Calling in to say I'm homesick.
And let's say,
All I want is to spend the day.
if I was listening to this, and I loved that line, I was like, wow, that last word, bed, that is so cool. I want to really put a lot of emphasis on that word. How am I going to do it? Maybe I'll add some delay. I'm going to solo save this. I don't know if that's a thing in other DAWs, but it's a thing in Pro Tools where you want to have this solo saved, which means that other solos don't cancel it out, so that if you solo your vocal, you're still hearing your reverb. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's a thing in other DAWs. So Unity, follow main pan. There's reasons to not follow your main pan, such as if you wanted to have a guitar in the left channel but have the reverb in the right channel. But yeah, so then I'm gonna do my thing, one band EQ, boom, 80 hertz, and then I'm gonna skip past my favorite delay and go down to, I think this is the one that comes with Pro Tools. Yeah, that's the one that comes with Pro Tools. So let's find a preset to start with. My God, lots of things on here. Thank you, Pro Tools. And let's start with, let's do a slapback with chorus.
Day in bed.
Now, I never use this, so bear with me. All right, it's 100% wet signal. That's good.
Day in bed.
I think I actually want something that's a bit more dramatic than that. So let me undersea.
Day in bed.
Oh, that's going to draw a lot of attention to that end there. But maybe I want my delay to be longer.
Day in bed.
Oh, that's a bit too long.
Day in bed.
So my issue is that I don't want this crazy undersea delay on everything. And I'm just using this as an example. This is probably not the right creative choice here, but I just wanted to show you how automation works, because automation is your friend and is something that you should use with great success during this and all other recording projects. Every DAW has automation. It may appear in different ways, but it allows you to like draw in when an effect is going to happen or not. The way that I'm using it here is on the reverb, or on the delay aux. So I am automating the volume of this, and I am having it off and then turning it up just on the word that I want, and then I will turn it off again over here. So let's listen. So yeah, not the right creative choice, but fine for now to play with. And then let's look over here and see what happens. So you can see the faders move. This is sorry. This yeah, automation is important to get the hang of, to get a good mix. Another use of automation is like if I wanted this vocal line here to be louder because I listened and used my ears and decided that it was too quiet, I could use automation to write in changes in volume on that track. I believe in Logic, people often use it to write in tempo changes and stuff as well. So yeah, learn how to use automation. It's your friend. Yeah, one thing that I don't have the opportunity to talk about in this mix is the use of the stereo space, but I will chat about that a bit in the next mix, and Ellen, cut me off whenever. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to get too into rock band recording in this because I've gone over time, as I always do in everything in my life. But yeah.
Mikey Hogan on YouTube says it's awesome to hear how 100 subtle movements go together to make a brilliant mix.
Oh, yeah, it is awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's like you don't have to be super dramatic in any one thing. If you're just, if you're making thoughtful choices along the way is really what it is. I was helping a friend with a mix the other day, and I was like, explain to me this reverb, and he was like, I don't know, I used a preset. I'm like, no, we need to be thoughtful in what we do. Shade thrown. So, got my guitars. These are my 2 guitar colors always. The bass gets the gross color, sorry. Getting organized here before I get started, because that's the kind of gal I am. I've gone through this and muted tracks that I don't need, because I don't need this extra noise here. Jack Etchegaray did not sing on this song, so he's going away. My Jacob Chorwick did not play the floor tom, and the rack tom I determined at some points the mic on it didn't sound good, so I'm not using it. So I've got this really, really simple drum setup. And yeah, I've got this awesome recording that Property did for a video shoot at the Breezeway a couple of years ago. Here is how we were set up, just so you can get some ideas about why I'm making certain decisions. Very cool look from yours truly here. No shoes. I don't want to make any sound when I'm running around while we're recording.
And Sarah from earlier isn't that bad.
Yes, sorry, I meant to say that, but I'm rushing. This is our dear angel, Sarah Harris. Excellent musician, excellent engineer in her own right. She mixed the last Property album that I was lucky enough to master, and it sounded incredible. They're a very fun band, 4 very fine musicians, plus Mr. Drum Machine over here. Thank you guys for letting me use this mix. So I went back to an old version of this that is like super raw, that I hadn't really done hardly anything on, because I thought that would be useful. Here we are going to see a little bit about how you might use the stereo space. So let's have a look at our guitars here. We've got Sarah and Jack playing guitars. We saw in the photo that Sarah was on the left and Jack was on the right, so that's why I made this decision. But multiple guitars and like multiple synths and stuff, that is a really fun way to play with your stereo space. If you have a lot of instruments on a song, it can start to sound very crowded very quickly, and a really cool way of working with that is by moving things around in the stereo space. I did a song for Property one time where there's like a little motive on the guitar that repeats 4 times, and like moved it from one ear to the other, and it was just so fun. It's fun to do. Have a great time. So yeah, I've shown you how to do EQ and compression 1,000 times now. I'm just gonna bring these back in. I'm just gonna bring them up to show you what I've done. You can see, ooh, that's a bit of a crazy one. Oh, look, I started with a preset there called Snare Drum Aggressive, and then I made the appropriate changes after I used my ears to listen and see what I liked the sound of. Drum machines, synthesizers, stuff like that. I'm cheating and using a fancy distortion, but it's just a distortion, don't worry. Also breaking my own rule and putting a gated reverb directly on the drum machine channel. I'm not sure why I did that, probably because I didn't ever think anyone would call me out on it. But I really should have sent it to the Verb. Joke's on me. This is, a little bit of delay on there. Sorry for cheating and using plugins that I paid for, but here we are. Bass, kick, and snare, you generally want to be right down the middle. There are times when you're going to not do that, I'm sure, but for the most part, that's the standard, and it's the standard for a reason, and that reason, well, there are many reasons. I'm going to stop talking. I decide that's too dramatic. I'm going to bring it back. Decide I want more kick, so I'm going to bring my compressor in more. Turn up that makeup gain. Where's the... Now I'm looking for the attack. It's important not to spend too long in the soloing a track and trying to make it sound perfect stage, because then you do something like spend 30 minutes on your kick drum, and when you bring the overheads in, you have to change everything. Another thing that is important to do that people often don't is to check the phase, especially on your drum mics. I have a really good slide about phase in another presentation, but basically, if you have a set of overheads, or even just one overhead, and then also a mic on your snare, the sound from that snare drum is hitting the snare mic a lot earlier than it's hitting the overhead. So the phase of those waveforms is not going to match. Like your snare one might be here, and like the peak will be here, and then with your overhead, it starts a bit later. If you look up phase cancellation online, there's lots and lots and lots of stuff about that. So one thing you can do to check your phase, this button here, which is like the null symbol, will flip the phase, and that, that's not always the issue, but basically if like you've got, sometimes it will require a more delicate movement than just flipping the phase, but oftentimes if you have like your overheads and your snare mic on, and you find that your snare sounds really thin when both of the mics are on, you can flip your phase and see if it fixes things. Just does it sound better with that button clicked or not?
Just flipping it from left to right? No.
It's like up and down, I think,
okay.
over the y-axis. It's not something you can like see, but it's just like phase alignment issues, but it's kind of hard to explain right now. Sorry.
That's fair.
Yeah, but that is something you want to check for. If you have a thin sound, try finding that button. And it's not like your fault also if that happens. It's just one of the joys of recording. So yeah, so I'm gonna probably bounce over to mastering now, if that's okay with you, Elling. Just, I'm a bit concerned about the time. I've already kept Elling and Sarah here for a while. But before I do that, I will just demonstrate with an acoustic drum kit a little bit about what I was talking about earlier with compression on drums. So let's turn this compressor up where it's 6 ratio. Let's turn the threshold down. If I were to turn the attack way up, more up. So the attack is 1 second now, and none of these kick drum hits take a second. So they're actually getting by the compressor. They're not being affected by it because the attack is too long. Now you can hear it, right? So that's what attack is for. The release, if I turn the release way up, then the compressor never has a chance to get back to its starting point before the next hit happens. So you end up with this like overly compressed sound. So you may not like mess with these too much, but it's important to know what they do so that you can identify issues in your mix. Depth is not a common one, so I'm not going to get into that. I did have a little bit about sidechain compression in this, so I will go back to the hello session and talk about that just really quickly. Sidechain compression is used a lot in dance music, and Ellen told me a lot of people are making electronic music, so I'm going to chat about it really quick. It allows one instrument or track to always be super present in the mix. So the level of one instrument tells the compressor on another instrument to start working. Creates a pumping effect, common in dance music as a creative tool. It also has other practical applications. And here's another isotope thing about how sidechain compression works. Ooh, here we go. So I think I'm going to talk about Logic again, but Logic makes it super easy to do this. And Pro Tools does too, to a degree. So what I'm going to do is going to delete this because I don't need it. And I'm just going to solo the kick and the bass. And I have put this second iteration of channel strip on here to use the sidechain function on it. So what I'm doing is I'm sending the kick to bus 1, which is an arbitrary bus that I have chosen, at full unity. And I am going into my compressor on my bass track and selecting the key as bus 1. Control. There we go. Then when I go into the sidechain portion of this compressor, I select the source as the key. I select the detector to peak. Pick which one sounds better. I think it's peak. And then, oh, I've got to set this back. My output. Silly me. And then if I don't bypass this, then I'll actually hear it making a difference. So you can see what's happening now, or you can hear what's happening, is that the kick is triggering the compressor that I have on the bass. So the kick is always going to be coming through, and the bass is like getting out of the way. This is obviously way too intense, but and it may not be the way that we would use this in this kind of music, but it has extremely cool applications, especially in dance music. You'll hear it a lot with like synthesizers, where they will like duck out of the way to make room for the kick, or for like whatever bass is happening in dance music, where you always want that like oomph oomph. Yeah.
I love how Andy Stott creates these like kind of vacuum like spaces in his music, just like anyway.
And that's probably through methods like this one.
Side chaining. Oh,
Yeah.
someone Acapella Wolf on Twitch says he often uses sidechain compression on his vocal track to make it cut through.
Oh yeah, that's wise too, especially if you are recording live, I would imagine, and like playing an instrument while you're singing. Yeah, that's cool. I don't use it. I honestly don't use it that often, just because of the type of music that I work on, like country music or folk music or stuff. It's not really common. Could be though.
Classical music.
Classical music, certainly
doesn't really
not.
happen.
I don't have the opportunity to do a lot of classical anymore, but that's definitely my background. So let's listen to it and let's.
Sweating bullets in my pocket.
So yeah, here's if we make the compressor relax a bit.
Calling in to say I'm homesick.
You can hear that bass like getting out of the way for the kick. So yeah, can be extremely cool. Can also sound like garbage. So use sparingly or use thoughtfully. Yeah, that's some methods of mixing. Use automation, mix with your ears. Don't mix for too long. This is like a bit of a long session. I don't know why. Definitely not my fault. And yeah, you want to take breaks. You want to just like shake it out. Another good thing to do, especially if you start getting stuck, it's February 27th, you're freaking out, is to pull a reference into your track. When I've worked on stuff with Nick before, he really likes this group Men I Trust. So I will sometimes like play a little bit of one of those songs and be like, oh, can I find inspiration in this? Yeah, and that can be super, super helpful. You can pull a reference right into your session, or you can just take a little listening break. Yeah, let's talk about mastering. And also, I think I said this already, but this presentation that has all these links in it is on my website, michellelecor.com, under the Educator tab right here as a PDF. Yeah, let's talk about mastering. People think mastering is like a dark art. People think that you need $20,000 worth of hardware equipment to master stuff. They think that you have to like sell your soul to the devil. It is not the case. Mastering, in my view, is, well, in a professional sense, mastering is getting another set of ears on a project at the end of the project. And generally you want that to be somebody you trust and they are in a room that they know and trust and using equipment that they know and trust. And that's, like, mastering is a much more technical process than a creative process. There's other things that professional mastering engineers do where, like, they will ready your material for distribution by embedding metadata and getting things ready for CD duplication. Mastering engineers who work on vinyl understand that medium, and we're able to like get a track ready so that it will sound the best on a vinyl record. But yeah, in this context, we're going to think of mastering as like the final touches, the icing on the cake. The other thing that a mastering engineer has that a mix engineer does not is a lack of familiarity with the work. So oftentimes people will like ask me for a quote for a grant and they'll be like, can you mix and master this? I'll tell them like, I can mix it, but by the time the record is mixed, I'm going to have listened to it for like 30 hours. If I'm recording it too, it's going to be even more. I need another set of ears on it. So I always suggest that you get somebody else to master your music. And when I was in school, me and my classmates used to master each other's tracks, and it was so helpful. And it was also just really lovely to see what my friends were working on. So if you have a friend who's doing RPM, master each other's tracks. If you don't like it, that's okay. It's not personal. It's just taste. But yeah, it's a nice thing to do. Mastering makes use of several techniques. I'm going to focus on EQ, compression, and imaging. Similarly to how we use these techniques in mixing, a mastering engineer employs them at this step in production, but often with different goals in mind. And I'm going to talk about loudness. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, imaging. Like, if I'm panning guitars because, like, I think it sounds cool, like, they might be thinking about the stereo field in, like, a more practical sense. And then loudness. It's very important for us to understand what loudness is and how to achieve it across systems. This is has the potential to be like very problematic for new producers. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on it. Another Isotope link. Sorry, I would love to put some other ones in this project, but they just have so much good stuff. So in the mastering phase, we're talking about EQ. Does the mix sound clear across the frequency spectrum? You know, do you have build-ups at certain EQs? Do you find that overall it sounds muddy? Is it bright? Is it shrill? These are all ways of talking about sound that can be helpful. Have you checked it on different systems? Very important. If I master something, sometimes, most of the time, I will sit down on my laptop and listen to my master through my laptop speakers or through my phone, because that's how people are listening these days, and I don't want it to get completely out of whack if someone listens on their phone. Compression and limiting. A limiter is just a compressor with the ratio turned all the way up. So nothing fancy, just a compressor for a different function. They're used to avoid peaking, so clipping, getting too loud for the system, exceeding that headroom that we talked about earlier, decreasing dynamic range, and increasing the overall level. We might want to decrease our dynamic range so that the quiet parts aren't so quiet that if someone's listening on the metro, they can't hear it. And we want to increase the overall level for a similar reason so that it sounds good across systems. Imaging. Should this mix be mono? Should it take up more space in the stereo image? How do we want to achieve that? And then saturation and effects. I like to stay open-minded here, but also proceed with caution because you don't want to take on the role of a mix engineer in the mastering stage. I have occasionally put a bit of tape saturation, but tape saturation is distortion, so you want to be subtle there. Once I put reverb on a master, but I asked permission first. Not usual to do. Going to talk about loudness. These days, we measure loudness in LUFS. LUFS is a unit of perceived loudness. I think it's loudness units full scale instead of dB. dB is a physical measurement of sound pressure level. We moved to LUFS in response to the loudness wars and the subsequent lack of dynamic range. You may have heard about the loudness wars. It was not a literal war. It was producers in the 90s and early 2000s, such as Rick Rubin, fighting to make everything as loud as possible. There's a really fun story about the Metallica album, Death Magnetic, that was so loud that the waveforms just look like a sausage, all the way across. And the mastering engineer on that record has said that everything was clipping when he got it. Everything was so loud he couldn't do anything with it. And then when Guitar Hero came out and there were songs from Death Magnetic and Guitar Hero, everyone was like, wow, these sound amazing, because they had returned to the older mixes that weren't crushingly loud to, take the guitar out of. And everyone liked them better because they had dynamic range. You don't just want everything crushed and loud. Music breathes. When you're at a concert, there are moments that get quieter and get louder, and that lends to the energy in the room. So lends to the energy in your mix as well. For digital distribution, we aim for -14 LUFS. What do all these numbers mean? I will tell you. When you send your stuff, your music, to a streaming service like Spotify, YouTube, I'm not sure about SoundCloud. I don't know what they do. No idea about Bandcamp. But when you send your music to a streaming service, they have this level that they want to achieve. So they will turn your mix up or down sometimes to reach this level. So if you crush your tune because you want it to be super loud and in your face, and it's hitting at -6 LUFS or something, when it goes up on Spotify, they're just going to turn it down. And so then it's just going to sound silly because all this work that you put into it to make it super loud is not coming across anymore because Spotify is going to turn it down anyway. So we aim for -14 LUFS. This is a metering plugin, Ulian.co. There's a free version, there's a paid version. Just use the free version. I'm going to teach you how to read it so that you don't need the paid version. Loudnesspenalty.com is a website that you can have analyze your music for free, and it will tell you if it's getting turned up or down on the services that turn them up or down. It's cool to use as well. Sweetwater article, what is LUFS and why should I care? A Lander article, LUFS loudness metering. Lander is an automatic mastering service. I will never use those. And then these two guys are giants in the field of mastering, and they both have videos on YouTube if you want to learn more. Bob Katz, who also has a ton of really interesting papers, and Alan Silverman. So yeah, let's open a session. Another band I love working with, Soap Opera. Oh no, it's this one. We did this, Ellen. We did this.
Good towny band.
Good towny band. Excellent towny band. So this is a Soap Opera track that I mastered a while ago called Tension Mountain. So I'm going to play you the track that I got from their mix engineer, and we can have a listen to that. Look at all the beautiful dynamic range in this track. This is a good mix engineer who sends something for mastering that's not already super compressed. What a guy.
At a loss for words and thoughts, reeling from basic interaction I could never act upon.
Wow, sounds amazing. I have this metering plugin called Isotope Insight. When I got it, it was free. I looked it up and now it's $200. So we're not going to use it. We're going to use Yulian because it's free. I know, isn't that rude? It was $200 when it first came out, or it was free when it first came out, and now it's $200. So the nice thing with this one is that I can put in my like limit that I want, my target. Yeah, I'll just leave them both open. And I also have all these different windows, like they show me the sound field. I can show EQ, spectrogram, stuff like that. This one is really just a loudness meter.
At a loss for words and
So
thoughts.
you can see here, integrated LUFS is what I'm referring to when I'm saying like -14. It's the integrated LUFS, which is over the whole song. So if I were to just play this for like a sec
Never see it.
and stop, well, that's not really giving me the full picture, is it? Because that's just a second of a song that's like 3 minutes long or something, 4 minutes. So yeah, I'm looking at my integrated LUFS and I'm gonna want to like listen throughout.
For words and thoughts, reeling from basic interaction I could never act upon. Come to me as a woman, come to me as perfection, come to me on this mountain, we both lost our direction. There's a look in your eyes, let my mind latches on to a thought, let your thought.
So I did this first very extremely subtle EQ. This is listening on my fancy headphones, 2 pairs of headphones on my nice speakers. This is how I'm coming up with this stuff. This mix was pretty mono, which was definitely the trend at the time, and maybe still is. But I thought it was a little bit too mono for me, so I added this Ozone Imager, which was also free and I think still is, on Plugin Boutique, maybe on the Isotope website as well. And I decided to widen the mix a little bit using this plugin.
Could be worse, but you'll never see it. You'll never see it again.
Listen to the cymbals.
Could be worse, but you'll never see it. You'll never see it again. You'll never see it again.
If you're using stereo effects like this, you need to check your mix on headphones because sometimes they can cause phase cancellation between the left and right channels. You must listen to the entire song and with headphones on and make sure that you're not getting any weird phase cancellation. Extremely important. You also cannot use effects like this if you're going to vinyl. Then I went in and put a limiter on here,
but you'll never see
so that
it.
I don't
You'll
peak.
never see it again. You'll never see it.
I'm sure there was a reason for this. I can't remember what it was, but I put another limiter on there. So these limiters are not acting as compressors. They are brick wall limiters. They are telling... I'm telling the song, if you hit like negative 1.6 decibels, stop. So do not pass go. Do not get any louder.
Could be worse, but you'll never see it. You'll never see it again.
I'll clear these because they're
You'll
from
never
before.
see it again. Never see it again.
And so then I would listen to the whole song and I would maybe do a bounce and leave this plugin open, which is something I have the luxury of here. I'm not sure if that's a thing in other places, and so in other DAWs, and so I'd let the plugin analyze the track while I'm bouncing it and make sure that I'm hitting roughly my targets. If I'm a little bit above my targets, I'm like not too worried about it. But yeah, mastering is another time when it's extremely useful to have a reference. So I have Tidal open over here with these 3 songs that the band sent me. I actually think this was for a different EP that I did of theirs, that these were the references, but it's a vibe. Yeah, I have another mastering example, but it's more or less similar to how I did this one, and thank you to Wiley for letting me use that. I'm sorry I didn't actually play it.
Acapella Wolf on Twitch asks that mastering doesn't generally have all the tracks, just a stereo track.
Correct. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, mastering is, your mixing is done and you just send a stereo track. Occasionally, you may want to also have the vocal track as a separate stem. That can be very helpful sometimes as a pro, but for the most part, yeah, just a stereo track. Do we have any other questions out there in the virtual world, Ellen?
People, Salman says he's loving all the music today. These are all Newfoundland bands, right?
Yeah, they're all Newfoundland bands. They're all great. They're all on my website, and on my website you will find links to how to listen to them, and credits to the other engineers, because
real
recognize real. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think I've covered it all. I went almost a full hour over time. I'm so sorry.
Salman asks, could you talk just a few minutes about using reference tracks for mastering?
Yeah, totally. So, with mastering, it's like super useful to bring the track into your session, but like as a professional mastering engineer, I find it really useful to like get the vibe. I'm a professional. I find it useful to get the vibe of like who the band is looking for. I mastered a whole record one time with like this real like 60s kind of folk pop vibe, and they came back to me and they were like, no, like think of Rod Stewart. And I was like, wow, I was so off base. So it's really useful there. Like this is like soap opera are like definitely inspired by Tame Impala. So when I listen to that, I hear, it's like very steady across the frequency spectrum. I'm not going to play too much of these because I'm afraid the video will get flagged for copyright infringement. But they have a very like clear sound across the frequency spectrum. There's not like a tremendous amount of bass. I find there's a lot of clarity in the high end. And they make good use of the stereo field, which was inspiration for me when I was mastering that track. It can be really useful if you have access to an actual file, which I guess you could. I'm thinking about how I could record from Tidal directly into Pro Tools, but I think that's illegal. But yeah, if you have the track on a CD or whatever, then you can actually pop it into your session and like A/B it, like solo it, and be like, okay, have I reached my goal yet? No, I haven't. Why not? And like use your ears to solve the mystery. And also for loudness, but that can be dangerous if you're ripping stuff off of a CD, because obviously those things are being mastered to play to a different system. It can be really useful to gain match things if you're doing that. So once you know that you're like hitting approximately minus 14 LUFS, then you could just on your reference track like take the volume down until they are gain matched, because the louder one's always going to sound better.
Amazing. Michelle.
Ellen.
Thank you.
It's nighttime now. I'm sorry.
It is.
I'm so sorry. I promise next year I will have less examples.
I think Acapella Wolf was actually in Europe or somewhere, so it's even later for him. But he was staying up for it.
God love you, Acapella Wolf, and everyone out there in cyberspace. Thank you for joining me. Do I have any slides left? I don't think I do. This. Friends. references and metering. Yeah. Thanks.
Happy face. Perfect.
Thank you for having me. I'm really sorry I went so long. I hope it was useful to people.
Well, you can't, there's some things you can't cram into 1 hour.
Yeah. Yeah, and
That's
then when I
exactly it.
was chatting with you the other day, and I was like, I was just gonna have like a band and a singer-songwriter, and then you were like, there's a lot of electronic music. I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
I don't have any of that.
Oh yeah, the thank yous are coming in. Salman says, thanks for the session. This was super fun and useful to get a reminder of all the things. Tamara says, this has been so interesting and great. Acapella Wolf, really enjoyable. Alexandria Saunders says, thank you. Yeah, Acapella Wolf says it's almost midnight. Or
Thank you for
Mikey,
sticking around.
thank you. Claire Porter, Aaron Paris,
Oh,
John.
Claire.
John of Johns.
Thank you.
Well,
everyone.
yeah.
Thank you, Elling, for having me.
Bravo.
And Sarah and Lanya Vanya, who I love and adore, and thanks. I hope it was helpful.
You're amazing. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. It's so useful to people doing the RPM people. The RPM people.
The RPM people.
And if they can do any degree of these things, they will improve their work, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And also, just like, there's so much that we didn't touch on. Have fun. Use crazy delays and long reverbs, and crush the heck out of your drum kit if that's what you want. If it sounds good to you, then it's right.
On that note, perfect way to end it. Thanks. And I'll be talking to you and everybody out there in RPM land. It's February 14th tomorrow. So, do what you need to do for Valentine's Day if you're observing, and then get back to work.
Good luck with the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, good luck. Halfway point. Some energy is kind of, there's the initial spike of energy at the beginning, and then people hit the halfway point, and it starts to they feel drained. But just keep going, one foot in front of the other.
You can do it. Take a couple of days off if you need to.
Exactly.
Good for your ears.
Yeah. Thank you again, and
Thank you.
yeah.